A disappointing stretch of Bucks basketball continues. So disappointing, even the return of Giannis couldn't save it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do, y'all? Welcome to Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the industry, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, an NBA analyst with the Locked On Network and co-host of the Technical Foul podcast. Joining me is Frank Madden, longtime voice of the pod and the founder of brewhoop.com. And we appreciate you for tuning in and making Locked On Bucks that first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. And on today's show, woo boy, the Bucks got the brakes beat off of them again, this time by a short-handed Celtics team. So on today's show, we'll talk about Giannis making his return to the lineup, after missing the last 15 games. We'll examine some interesting, quote unquote, things we saw with the Bucks rotation tonight. And then I just want to have a general discussion about what the plan for this team should be. But we have to start with what we saw tonight, which was another blowout loss, another night of just questionable effort from everyone involved on this team to a level. Lost tonight to a Celtics team without Jaylen Brown, without Kata, without Tatum, lost by 27 points to the Celtics team. 108-81 loss to this Celtics team. This comes on the heels of losing by 23 points yesterday to the Bulls, comes on the heels of losing by 29 points to the Knicks. So again, the third straight blowout loss for the Bucks. Frank, do you I'm laughing before I even ask the question. Looking at this game tonight, is this a continuation of struggles that we have seen over the last couple of days at this point? Or is it somewhat of a factor of like, hey, is Giannis kind of readjusting to getting back into this lineup here? Maybe the team just had to figure things out with him coming back into this grouping, but it's the second straight game in a row where the offense completely stalled. I'll answer before I even throw it to you and say it's both, in my opinion. But what did you see on that front, Frank?
Yeah, unfortunately, we talked about it. I think after the Cavs game last week, right? Like about like, well, what do we take? Like, do we believe in this team a little bit? Like, et cetera. The unfortunate reality is like even when they won whatever it was 3 or 4 to start after the break, they didn't play defense at all.
Yep.
Like the Cavs game, they got crushed on the glass again. It was a lot of the kind of worst habits that we saw in the first half of the season. And they were able to win games because they just couldn't be stopped offensively, and they, shot the piss out of the ball. And, it's like they went to New Orleans and they gave up 82 paint points, still won because it's the Pelicans. And this is what happens, like if you don't have an identity and you don't play sustainable basketball, like it's going to catch up with you when you play teams that do play like that. And certainly the Bulls do not play like that. So really no excuse in that one. But the last 6 quarters, we're used to the defense being bad. Like this team has given up on, being good defensively. Like you can just tell guys that you think of as like good defenders. There's not like, and defense is hard, right? Like you can't be great defensively when you've got like 3 guys bought in out of 5 at any given point.
Right.
But like I think have seen like the level of consistent effort drop. But we at least felt like this team would be engaged offensively. And I think that's what stood out really so much over the last 24 hours is, the second half in Chicago, I think they scored 31 points. And in this game, they scored 38 points in the second half. But they only scored 43 in the first half too. So, so I don't have the season stats in front of me ranked, but this has to be one of the worst offensive performances that we've seen all season. And the funny part was like, they didn't even shoot that poorly. I think they shot 36% from 3, but inside the arc, they were terrible. This is
Mhm.
Giannis's first sub 50% shooting game of the season. And, he looked like he was getting into a rhythm early in the third quarter. They got it within 9. And then the Celtics went on. I don't even know what it
I
ended
think it
up
was a
being,
10-0
Camille.
run right after they
At
got it
least
down to
10.
9.
Yeah. I think it ended up being more than that. But they pretty much just kind of snapped their fingers, and the Bucks just kind of fell down, and, it was over. So, yeah, I mean, this is a poorly coached team that has no identity. And, it's too bad, right? Because there were some decent vibes, at least, with Giannis out, expectations were low. They go 8-7, I think it was, without Giannis, which on paper is, a good result, even though it was a super easy schedule with some really advantageous, like, opponent injury situations, let's say, as well. So, yeah, I mean, now we're just sort of back to Giannis is back, but the vibes are horrible. And, like, the guards in particular tonight, like, I
Yeah.
mean, we'll talk about the starting lineup changes, but, like, I mean, Brian Rollins has had good performances off the bench, but he looked completely off kilter coming off the bench tonight in his return to a 6-man role. KPJ was pretty anonymous, didn't really seem to know how to get back into a rhythm with Giannis. Cam
It seemed like he was
Thomas, I
questioning
don't know.
himself out there on the floor with the offense too, where like
Yeah.
passing up shots he normally would take and trying to find Giannis, and then just the communication was off. It didn't feel right for KPJ the entire time out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, just a terrible performance. And, that's now 3 straight. So, again, like, just bad times rolling downhill now. Um, and Yeah, I mean, again, like, this team obviously was really nowhere to begin with, and now they're kind of even further into nowhere after these last 3 games, and just to lose them in the fashion that they did too, right?
Yeah.
Not even competitive. I think just sort of tells you, like, again, that this team, again, there's no foundation that they have to build off of. And again, there is obviously some talent, especially some offensive talent, but
Mhm.
even with Giannis back tonight, like, clearly they just don't really know what they want to be.
Yeah, the lack of identity is glaring. And when you're talking about a lack of identity at the beginning of March, where it's like by this point in the season, teams should really know who they are, know what their identity is, understand what their role is. And yes, injuries have definitely played a role in the Bucks season so far. I think it's very fair to acknowledge that. But I think it's also very fair to say, like, these guys just seem completely lost out there in regards of what it is that they're supposed to be doing, which again points to coaching. This game was disappointing on another level too, because it's like, yes, it's a back-to-back for the Bucks here, but also a back-to-back for the Celtics. Like, and the Celtics had a rest disadvantage because they played in Boston at 7 p.m. Central Time, I believe it was, finished their game, flew in, got into Milwaukee at like 2 in the morning. Meanwhile, the Bucks had a matinee game in Chicago that was a bus ride away. And still the Celtics came out with more energy. Like, to see 19 offensive rebounds for the Celtics in this game, it just, I mean, it just speaks volumes, and so much more to discuss. But I mentioned how the coaching too has been disappointing. With Giannis returning to the lineup, we did see another new starting lineup, but also some rotations that confused me at times is the way I'll put it. So breaking down what we saw from the Bucks rotation after this. But first, a word from our friends over at Indeed. Because workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and then that one position that you still have to fill is just sitting there open. So when the pressure is on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. And the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get the job premium status it deserves at indeed.com/podcast. So head over to indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And we appreciate you for tuning in, making Locked On Bucks that first listen. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Make sure that you check out the Everydayer Club. $5 a month, $50 a year. You will get Locked On Bucks with no interruptions, no ads. You'll get access to a members-only Discord, so you can talk to other Buck fans who are everydayers, but as well as checking on other Discords. So head over to lockedonbucks.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Frank, as we mentioned, Giannis did make his return to the lineup. First game since January 23rd for Giannis. And with his return back to the squad, to the team, to the rotation, the Bucks made some lineup changes. The starting lineup looked different. You saw Ryan Rollins and Kyle Kuzma head to the bench. You saw Ousmane Dieng and Giannis get inserted into that starting lineup. Other lineup surprise, there was no Kyle Kuzma at all tonight. In post-game, Doc said Kuz not playing was purely a coaching decision and that they want to try to get as many minutes as they can for Dieng going forward. The last part, I have no qualms with, but it was very curious to see like Gary Harris check in during the first quarter. And it's like, oh no, Kyle Kuzma. Okay, that's interesting to see that Pete Nance gets his first minutes in the third quarter. Like, what were your thoughts on the Bucks rotation tonight? And should this be the group of 10, 11 guys that are playing regularly for the squad going forward?
I mean, they're just desperate, right? I mean, I think that's just as simple as that, right? I mean, I think the Dieng decision, I think, gets at like something that we've talked about a bit, which is, in the year 2026, where positional size has become really important again, where offensive rebounding has become important again. Can you really kind of make it with a 3-guard lineup as your starting group? And I mean, statistically, that group has fared well, and they've actually, like, the defensive rebounding numbers are good with Porter, Rollins, and AJ, in spite of the fact that like those guys have played with a lot of different groups, especially with Giannis, in and out throughout the season. So it's like kind of worked better than it maybe feels like it should have. But certainly, as you think about like evaluating this team moving forward, and kind of fit of guys, right? I think we saw during the last time when Giannis came back, I think Rollins in particular kind of struggled to figure out like what his role was. It felt like he was kind of camped in the corner a lot. So I'm sure kind of like part of the thinking here is, AJ as an off-ball gravity guy has more value than Ryan just sort of standing in the corner, occasionally being a second side attack guy, and instead using him off the bench where you can get him the ball more. I mean, that's, I think, the theoretical idea behind it. I think also in principle, Rollins makes more sense when he's got to share the floor with Cam Thomas, because Cam's obviously much more of an on-ball guy, and Ryan's better at playing off-ball than KPJ, who, since KPJ, especially because he doesn't really catch and shoot threes anymore. But I mean, tonight, like nothing worked tonight. So, I mean, we'll see kind of what moving forward. I think though the idea with Dieng obviously is like, well, he's the only guy who kind of plays like a 3-and-D wing, who actually is like properly small forward size. Because Kuzma also is that size defensively, but obviously his shooting is not something that teams really respect, even though he has been shooting the ball much better of late. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just desperation, right? It's just saying like, oh, what if we give Dieng some extended run? Doc talked about Dieng and Giannis getting some chemistry from whatever 4-on-4 type stuff that they did while Giannis was coming back. But I mean, again, like you saw a few moments, like Dieng had a nice kind of deep entry pass to Giannis in the first quarter. But there were other times where it was like, I think Dieng was kind of struggling to figure out like, okay, do I, pass? Do I shoot? How much do I push to try to get Giannis touches and things like that? So, it was an up and down night for him. I think he had 13 points. So certainly not. I mean, he was one of the better Bucks, probably one of the better offensive performances from the Bucks, which obviously were few and far between. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see like okay, so that didn't work. So then what do you do next game, given this is, game one of Giannis coming back? He's on the minutes restriction. He played 25 minutes tonight. And like I said, I mean, he actually started pretty well. I think he had like 17 points on, maybe it was like 6 of 10, 7-11 shooting, something like that, and then finishes 7 of 18. So I mean, he just missed everything, kind of from the early third quarter after he had that kind of brief burst on. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, someone pinged me, Cam Thomas should start, Camille, and the only thing I know for sure is that I do not need Cam Thomas starting. It felt like a kind of his season, his night in a nutshell was when they were getting their doors blown off in this early second quarter, and he was dribbling around and settles for like a long corner contested 2-point shot. And it was just like, yeah, that's sort of this game in a nutshell. So so I don't know. And as far as like those third quarter rotations, I mean, they were desperate. So I mean, throwing Pete Nance into the fray, who he had immediately hit a couple threes. I think that's just trying to throw stuff against the wall and see if any of it sticks. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I think there's I'd love to see them figure out ways to get like Jang and Pete Nance minutes. Even if maybe at times like it would maybe be, well, I don't even know. Like I was gonna say, like, oh, maybe it'd be smarter to play other guys, ahead of them. But it's like, who am I kidding at this point? Like, like what are you gaining with these? Because those guys actually, like, again, especially Jang makes some kind of moves out of youthful indiscretion. But for the most part, like, he's unselfish. I think defensively, he's really competent, switchable. Nance also, like, works really hard and generally is a smart player, makes kind of the right play offensively. So, I mean, whatever. Like you're not losing games because those guys are playing more. I think at this point, there's lots of other things. And again, tonight, I mean, I start with the guards and just we've seen them. Usually, you get like 2 out of 3 playing pretty well. And tonight, you had 0 for 3. So
yeah,
that's just really kind of tough to overcome. And Gary Harris randomly playing, I don't know, like some of this, I just wonder if it's like a coach giving a veteran guy like some random slot minutes just to, make sure he's still paying attention or whatever. But yeah, I mean, Doc's out of ideas at this point. I mean, I think this coaching staff's been out of ideas for quite some time. And, I think right now they're just in desperation mode.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. And to me, coming into this game, I wonder how deep the rotation is for this team for a few reasons. One, second, I have a back-to-back, but also just because I feel like I say it often, minutes are earned, and I feel like quite a few guys had earned minutes during that stretch without Giannis playing. So I was like, I'm very curious to see how Doc handles the rotation. Seeing Gary Harris get in the game, even if it was only for like 8 minutes or so in this one before he got to garbage time, like even in that little stretch of minutes there for him, it was like, not Kyle Kuzma. And I understand that you want to see what Jane can do, and I'm 100% here for that. I'm going to talk a little bit more of that in the upcoming segment about how I feel like the season should continue to go for this team, but was very, very surprised to see no Kyle Kuzma at all when he is somebody who this season, I give him a lot of credit for buying into his role. He was somebody who on the bench tonight, to his credit, did not seem to be causing a stir. He was cheering his teammates on. He seemed like he was in decent spirits, but for as much as he altered his game for the betterment of this team, to see him not get a minute in this one was very, very surprising to me. But with that said, I think the Jane comments hints at the bigger picture of what this season could be and ultimately should be for the Bucks going forward. So I want to talk a little bit more about the path forward for the Bucks and what that should look like right after this. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. March is a time to celebrate women, especially around International Women's Day, and to recognize just how much women can carry at work, in relationships, and families, and even in all the different unseen roles that we tend to step into every single day. It's very easy to celebrate that strength, but it is just as important to make space for emotional well-being. And that honestly goes for everyone, not just women. Like I've said this the last few times doing this read, but like I truly do admire my mother's strength and how she's able to be so much to so many people. And she carries that without saying much. And it makes me think like how many other people are doing the same, carrying that without saying too much, the roles we play, the expectations we carry, the pressures that we don't always talk about. I know personally, I carry more than I like to admit more often than not. And therapy can actually be very helpful with that. creating balance, setting healthy boundaries, supporting your overall well-being. And with over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people being served worldwide, BetterHelp makes getting started simple. Fill out a short questionnaire, they match you a licensed therapist, and if it's not the right fit, you can switch anytime. Your emotional well-being matters. Find support and feel lighter in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel because college basketball is nonstop. From big games, tight spreads, momentum swings, every single night. From the early tip-offs to the late-night West Coast shootouts, there is always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay that you want. Rivalry games, ranked games, whatever fits your need. You can even mix spreads and totals and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe or go bold. Ride with the team you've been following all season. Listen, it's your parlay, your style, now with even more upside behind it. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game, and please remember to gamble responsibly. Okay, Frank, I mentioned the path forward because we know the intentions of this team, right? We know the intentions is to go for a playing spot. That's what they're playing for. They seem to be in alignment organizationally to the coaching staff, to the players, even though sometimes the way that this coaching staff operates, I'm like, is this really like a stealth tank going on where it's like we're just actually we're doing things behind the scenes here to just kind of make this continue going. But seriously, it makes me think about what the actual path forward should be for this team, because it was feeling a little bit different when the Bucks were like a game out of the play-in. And it was like, hey, momentum is building. We know Giannis is coming back, but then you have these 3 big blowout losses to the Knicks. One can say understandable, one of the top teams in the East, but the way you lost to the Bulls, where your offense dried up, a Bulls team that had not won the entire month of February. Then you play a shorthanded Celtics team that is also on a rest disadvantage, and they just dismantle you. And now you find yourself 3.5 games out of the 10 seed, 4 games out of the 9 seed. So yeah, it's still playable. It's still in reach. But in your opinion, what should the goal for the rest of this season be? Because for me, I think the goal ultimately is figuring out who, if anyone on this roster, is built to actually stay on this roster going forward. Who makes sense around Giannis if we're trying to keep Giannis? What players make sense? That's like my viewpoint on it. Whether that results in wins or losses, so be it. But hearing the comments about Jang after the game, I'm like, cool. I want to see more of that. I want to see some different combinations of guys who just got here, like Cam Thomas with Giannis on the floor and Jang all in the same line. What does that look like? Want to see it. So for me, I think my pathway forward is more so of let's just get these young dudes some run. Let's see what it looks like. If it results in wins from that, cool. If not, we are figuring things out. But for you, Frank, what do you think the goal forward for the rest of this season should be?
I mean, the starting question for all this is, well, what of Giannis, right? And I think if they were not trying to impress Giannis enough to have him not want to leave, then I think probably it's a different discussion. I think, if Giannis was already traded or if Giannis was out for the season, I think in that scenario, you'd be leaning into Jang over Kuzma and those sorts of moves, probably earlier. And, I think there'd be less question about them doing that. Not that Kyle Kuzma can't help a tank, because full blown Kuz can have plenty of games where, he's maybe not necessarily contributing to winning any more than Jang probably could. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of the strangeness of all this is I think we're all assuming that they're trying to be good enough that at least like they don't depress the hell out of Giannis to make him feel like, man, I got to get the F out of here as soon as possible. And I mean, if tonight was any indication, or the last 24 hours or any indication, then like that's not looking like such a, something that we necessarily want to bet on. But, again, like as we kind of have said continually, like, especially with a team that is just so like hopelessly mediocre as this one seems to be, they're going to have these bad games, then they'll probably show some signs of life, then they'll have bad games, disappointing games. Like this just probably how this team is going to be. Like they're just, the the gravitational effect of their mediocrity is going to be hard to overcome from more than kind of brief stretches. So yeah, well, I mean, again, we just don't know which version of this team is probably going to show up night to night. I think certainly you would certainly expect offensively, like they can't be as bad as they were the last 24 hours, on Wednesday against the Atlanta Hawks. But who knows, Camille? Like what I'm not going to pretend to have, any sort of insight, because, like where are guys' heads at this point? Who knows, right? I mean, you have a lot of guys who I'm sure are pretty, I don't say bummed out, because I mean, at the end of the day, they're still like guys being paid millions of dollars to live their dreams. And, it's like KPJ and Ryan Rollins, like they're still getting way more opportunity than probably like they could have hoped to be getting, especially when you consider where they were like a year ago. But it's just a very weird team right now. And clearly you watch them play, it just does not seem like people are on the same page. And again, like I think they're young enough and kind of fragile enough that they're going to be games where things kind of hit on offense and suddenly everybody's feeling good, and maybe the defensive effort gets a little better. And then there are nights like tonight where it just looks like just a disaster from basically a few minutes into the game onward. So so I again, like predicting what this team's going to do next feels like it's been a fool's errand all year. And so version of the team we see on Wednesday night, heck if I know, Camille. But certainly I'm not a betting man, but let's just say I would not be getting close to any Bucks money lines or Bucks any optimistic bets at this point, because you're implicitly betting on Doc Rivers. And I think at this point, like this team, Doc has they're out of Doc's out of ideas. They're throwing stuff against the wall, and hey, a line, but again, is there something sustainable here that's gonna 3.5? I think the 3.5 now back of the 10 seed. I mean,
Yep.
This is just like a sad, march at this point towards mid-April, it feels like. And so maybe they can bottle something, maybe Giannis kind of gets his wind in his legs a bit, and they figure out like, oh yeah, you can actually play and win games around Giannis Antetokounmpo, which doesn't feel like it should be rocket science, but it's obviously a struggle right now.
Yeah, this is a Bucks team, as you mentioned. We mentioned 3.5 games now out of the 10 seed, while being on a 3-game losing streak. Meanwhile, the Hornets and the Hawks, who are your 10 and 9 seeds currently, respectively, have both won 4 games in a row. So 3 teams going in different directions right now, with the Hawks and the Hornets doing the thing that you would want to see from your team right now at this point in the season. Meanwhile, the Bucks are doing that thing you wouldn't want to see your team doing if you're trying to chase that play in. I'll wrap it up just by saying this. The Bucks this season have just proven themselves to be an unserious basketball team with bad coaching. And that's like a double dagger of what you cannot have going against you. In addition, then you sprinkle in injury misfortunes to the team. And it's just been a recipe of not what I expected coming into the 2025-26 season. But here we are, and we're going to be here still talking about this team every day, still here after the post game. I can already see if they have an impressive game against the Hawks, me trying to talk myself into the math of like, hey, well, the play-in is in this reach. But the reality of this team is like, even if they make it to the play-in, even if they find a way to get through that tournament, like expectations are very, very low for what comes out of that. But that'll do it for today's episode of Locked On Bucks. Make sure you subscribe, follow the pod so you get all the latest episodes. Again, check out the Everydayer Club. Get that ad-free episodes of Locked On Bucks. Members only Discord. Head to the link in the description to learn more. And for those of you who are on video, we're going to send you over to the first ever 24/7 National NBA YouTube channel. On the audio side, make sure you make that second listen, NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA. You'll catch me on that episode today on Tuesday, so check that out. We truly do appreciate you for tuning in to Locked On Bucks. For Frank and myself, we will catch you later.